Hello, everyone. Hello, hello. Nice to see you all. Thank you very much. Well, this is my first time back preaching since my 6 months on the Isle of Skye. And what a 6 months it was. The way it came about was remarkable. God very graciously, clearly told me, you're going to Skye and you're going there for 6 months. So I went and I did a pastoral placement up there at Skye Bible Church, which is actually the church that my parents planted back in 1994. Yes, I was born in 95. And so I was there 6 months on the leadership team, and what a 6 months it was. Very different from Glasgow. I was living in a wee village with more sheep and cows than people, and by the sea, and it was a wonderful time to just grow in intimacy with God and to be taught some very useful lessons and to be used by God over that time. And so it was a special time. We did so much things, basketball, outreach. Nobody plays basketball in Skye, but they came anyway. And we had preaching and got to minister to different churches and believers across the island, and I could talk about it all day. Now, I was doing that part-time, and then I also went up with the intention of finding a part-time job. And everybody was telling me on Skye, there's loads of jobs. All these places are looking for work. There's loads of jobs. You'll have no problem finding a job. So I go up, I think, it won't be that hard to find a job. And every job I asked for or inquired about, I just got no's. I couldn't believe it. All the doors were closing. I was going to the door closed. Okay, got the door closed. All these doors closed. I couldn't get a job. I thought, jinx, I need to get a job. Now, someone had mentioned to me that the undertakers were looking to hire. And of course, I thought, I'll just go this way. But it seemed to just keep coming up, and different people were coming up to me telling me about the undertakers. I said, I don't want to work at the undertakers. But eventually I said, okay, God, I guess all the doors are closing except this one door, so I'll push this door. And sure enough, before I knew it, I was at an undertaker's, working at an undertaker's. I thought, why? Why does God want me here? But you don't see how God works till hindsight. Isn't that often the case? And what a place it was to have such meaningful conversation with people. Meaningful conversation with people. And I was struck by certain things and how people, when they're faced with death and their own mortality, where people's minds go, where people's hearts go, and how they view these things. And God placed me in that place to speak His truth and His light. And it was a really, really precious thing. So I'm gracious to God for having His way. I'd like to start today by reading from this psalm, which goes on from that kind of note. Our days on earth are like grass. Like wild flowers, we bloom and die. The wind blows and we're gone, as though we had never been there. But the love of the Lord remains forever with those who fear Him. His salvation extends to the children's children of those who are faithful to His covenant, of those who obey His commandments. Now, wait a minute. If we're here today and gone tomorrow, then how can His love remain with us forever? Let me read that first few words in that first verse again. Our days on earth are like grass. See, our days on earth are not all of our days. They are just the beginning of our days. Yes, our bodies will bloom and die like wildflowers, but our bodies are just the packaging to an eternal spirit that lives within, that God spoke into creation. 2 Corinthians 4, therefore we do not lose heart. But though our outer person is decaying, yet our inner person is being renewed day by day. For our momentary light affliction, this is Paul speaking of the persecution we face when we live a life sold out for God. For our momentary light affliction is producing for us an eternal weight of glory far beyond all comparison. As Fiona was putting it, the uttermost. There's nothing bigger than the uttermost. Far beyond all comparison. While we look not at the things which are seen, but at the things which are not seen. For the things which are seen are temporal, but the things which are not seen are eternal. I have a quote. We are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. Yet because our days on earth, it can be easy to think, because our days begin on earth, it can be easy to think that this is all our days consist of. And when we do that, we will find ourselves only caring about temporal things and what rewards we can win for ourselves here on earth. So it is God's will that we be woken up to the reality of what we are, of who we are. And that's what I was met with when I was working at the Undertakers. I noticed a difference. There was many staff there. Some were those who had faith, and some who did not. And those without looked at a person who'd passed, and to them that was all that remained of the person. But to us who have faith, who know that we are spiritual beings, we recognize that that's just the packaging. The inner person lives within. When we don't appreciate the eternal, God, His kingdom, our own eternal nature, and that of those around us, we will find ourselves focusing solely on temporal things. I'd like to look at an example. The rich man and Lazarus. There was a rich man who was dressed in purple and fine linen and lived in luxury every day. Here's a man just seeing the temporal and accumulating as much as he can. He lived in luxury every day. At his gate was laid a beggar named Lazarus, covered with sores, and longing to eat what fell from the rich man's table. Even the dogs came and licked his sores. Even the dogs had compassion upon him. The time came when the beggar died, and the angels carried him to Abraham's side. The rich man also died and was buried. In Hades, where he was in torment, he looked up and saw Abraham far away with Lazarus by his side. So he called to him, Father Abraham, have pity on me, and send Lazarus to dip the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue, because I am in agony in this fire. But Abraham replied, Son, remember that in your lifetime you received good things, while Lazarus received bad things. But now he is comforted here, and you're in agony. How valuable all those luxury things and the fine linen must have seemed at the time, but what value were they to him in that moment? These days on earth that we're living now are just the very beginning of our life. All eternity is before us. You can't really put a number on eternity, but just put it this way. the days that we've lived so far are less than 1%, infinitely less than 1% of all the days you'll ever live. But does that mean they're not important? No. They are very important, for what we do with our days on earth will determine the eternity of our days beyond it. This is Jesus speaking. Then he called the crowd to him, along with his disciples, and said, "Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves, take up their cross, and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it. But whoever loses their life for me and for the gospel will save it. What good is it for someone to gain the whole world, yet forfeit their soul? Or what can anyone give in exchange for their soul?" And Fiona reminded us how only Christ was able to pay that price, and he has. Now, what of the temporary things then? What of this life and these days on earth? Do we just neglect it? Do we just ignore it? I'm going to read just a short little parable from Matthew. "The kingdom of heaven is like a treasure hidden in the field, which a man found and hid again. And from joy over it, he goes and sells all that he has and buys that field. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant seeking fine pearls. Upon finding one pearl of great value, he went off and sold all that he had and bought it." They both took what they had and they sold it. They reinvested what they had into something far much more precious. So when it comes to the temporal things and the different things that we might have in this life, God teaches us to invest everything that is temporary into the eternal. Whatever you have in this earth, you can invest into God's kingdom. Every time we do this, a divine exchange takes place. God takes that temporal thing that is bound for death and decay and converts it into that which will last forever. So how do we invest? I'd like to look at Matthew chapter 6. For a few examples. "Be careful not to do your acts of righteousness before men to be seen by them. If you do, you will have no reward from your Father in heaven." Further down in verse 5, "And when you pray, do not be like the hypocrites, for they love to pray standing in the synagogues and on the street corners to be seen by men. I tell you the truth, they have received their reward in full. But when you pray, go into your room, close the door, and pray to your Father who is unseen. Then your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you." And again in verse 16, "When you fast, do not look somber as the hypocrites do, for they disfigure their faces to show men they are fasting. I tell you the truth, they have received their reward in full. But when you fast, put oil on your head and wash your face, so that it will not be obvious to men that you're fasting, but only to your Father who is unseen. And your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you." If we give to receive an earthly reward, the praise of men, or more accumulation, or other earthly temporal things, we do ourselves out of that eternal reward, if that is our motivation. So, giving to receive an earthly reward produces no eternal reward. Then I'd like to come to the widow and her 2 coins. Jesus sat down opposite the place where the offerings were put and watched the crowd putting their money into the temple treasury. Many rich people threw in large amounts. But a poor widow came and put in 2 very small copper coins worth only a few cents. Calling his disciples to him, Jesus said, "Truly I tell you, this poor widow has put more into the treasury than all the others. They all gave out of their wealth, but she, out of her poverty, put in everything, all she had to live on." The weight of our reward isn't calculated by the volume of what we put in, or what it might be to others, but what it is to us. For through that, we can display faith and love for God. The old lady gave far less than all the others, but in proportion to what she had, she gave abundantly more. So don't say, "When I have more, then I will give. When I have more time, then I'll give some of my time. When I have more money, then I'll give some of my money. When I have more this, more that, then I'll give some." Be faithful with what you do have, so that God will entrust you with more. It's a good question, isn't it? What do you have? Yes, finances is one thing, but there's so many different forms of capital that we can have. We can have time. Time is a precious thing. Do you have time? Do you have a large capital of time? How are you investing that time? You might have physical capital, strength. That's what an athlete sows into, their physical capital and their strength, and with that they might accumulate money. But how can you invest your physical capital into something much more precious? So give generously, because God will not be outgiven. I have a wee scenario for you to finish with. If there was one apple left on earth, and it was in your hands, and you had the choice whether to eat it or plant it, what would you do? You'd plant it. Each of us have been given one life. Will you eat it or will you plant it? Will you consume it or will you invest it? God promises that as we invest into His kingdom, He will provide all that we need during the days we have here on earth. So that's what I believe God would inspire us with today. It's so easy, isn't it, as Fiona was talking about, to get caught up in the temporal and get caught up in this life and worrying about tomorrow and accumulating things. But we're spiritual beings at the very beginning of our existence, and what we do with these days on earth determines our eternal destiny. So take these days which you have and invest them into something that is eternal, that's something that will not see death and not see decay, but into God's kingdom, a kingdom that will last forever, that will well outlast this one, the kingdom of this world. Invest into that kingdom. Invest into your spiritual being. Invest into the souls around you, and invest into God's kingdom, and you will see great return. For God is a generous God, and He will not be outgiven. Amen. Amen.
As my brother Kenneth was concluding the message that the Lord has placed on his heart,
Welcome to Glasgow City Church. A very warm welcome to new visitors attending the service for the first time. If you wish to know more information on any of the events that you're about to hear, then follow us on social media or speak to someone in church today. Here are your weekly announcements. Every Sunday, we start off with a half hour of prayer from 10:15 a.m. before our 11 a.m. service. During the service, we have jam for youth aged 13 to 18 years old. Join a GCC life group in your local area to study this week's sermon in detail. They are held on different times during the week, so speak to someone in the church or speak to one of the pastors to get more information. On Saturday, we have a prayer gathering on Zoom with the different churches we partner with around the world. The prayer meeting takes place at 8 a.m. to 8:30 a.m. Consider joining us so we can pray together for all of our church believers. GEMS, the women's group, will be meeting on the second Saturday of every month from 11 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. All women of all walks of life are welcome to a fun day at the GCC Cafe. If you would like to give an offering to Glasgow City Church, please take a note of the details on screen or donate using the PayPal link on the church website. If you're a UK taxpayer, please remember to tick the gift aid option, as this will increase your giving by 25% at no extra charge. Alternatively, there are collection bowls at the front during the service for you to use if you wish. We thank you once again for your generosity. Hope you all have a great week, and thank you for listening to this week's announcements.